Welcome, everyone, back to the Finding Hope podcast. We're going to discuss today Romans, the latter part of Romans chapter 4. We got Will here. Say hello.
Hello.
And Jesse's back.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Feels good to be back.
We actually don't know where you've been.
Yeah, I missed all of Romans chapter 3.
Yeah,
I was a little disappointed I wasn't invited back. I
Yeah.
thought it was one and done kind of thing. Yeah.
I think you did 3.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did
Yeah,
more than one.
Yeah, you more than one. So Will, you were up yesterday talking about Romans chapter 4, and the interesting thing about Romans chapter 4 is, I think you said this in your sermon, Paul uses a hero of the faith, Abraham, as his kind of main topic and main example throughout the entire chapter.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, you know, I really did think long and hard about this because you begin to look at what he does in this chapter when you begin to really dig into it, because he just walks through Abraham's story, really, you know, in a very looking at the confidence, the faith that he had. And so it just made me begin to wonder, like, why did Paul go there? But you have to kind of think, and this is why I spent a long time in the intro yesterday trying to just set the groundwork to think about Paul's life, the journey that Paul was on, and where he had been, and how there were situations in his life that felt hopeless, and who did he look to? And I just, as a growing up in the Jewish faith, he had to think about Abraham. I mean, it had to be one of those people, and I think the fact that he uses the story of Abraham here would give me reason to believe that that's probably where he went.
Yeah. I think Abraham was extremely venerated and maybe put on a pedestal that he probably shouldn't have been.
Oh, 100%. I think even today that's the case. I mean, like prior to this message, we were having life group, and we were talking about the faith of Abraham, and because it's in the first part of chapter 4 as well, and just some people in our life group were just talking about that, and I was like, I just don't know that. I'm like, the dude's just like us. Like he's still. Yeah, I'm not saying that he wasn't a monumental instrument of faith in the Old Testament, but we have to understand that just because God used him and his faith shone very bright through that situation doesn't mean he wasn't like us, or that he should be on such a high pedestal.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that's amazing about Abraham's life is that his life really didn't begin until he was 75. I think you hit on this, 75 years old, you kind of tried to identify some people in the service to say, hey, would you pack up and leave everything you had right now at 65, 55?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case. I mean, even if you go back, I mean, like leaving everything the comforts, the surroundings, it's hard. I mean, I know that from a personal standpoint. I mean, when I was called into ministry, we were going through college, and I knew God wanted me to go to seminary. First place I looked was New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina came through.
Didn't look at New Orleans again.
Shut that down. So then it was Fort Worth, Texas, and I mean that day that we left, our family went with us, but that day that our family left us there in Texas was a huge day, because no one really in our family had ever moved away from the surroundings like that and that big of a deal. And so you just think about that in the life of Abraham. I mean, what God calls him to do at the age that he calls him to do it at. I mean, it's a big step of faith.
Yeah. I think these guys in the Bible, and I can look at 3 of them in particular. You look at Abraham, Moses, and David, and these are 3 key characters in the Old Testament. God calls each of them at a different age. Abraham at 75, Moses really at 40, and then David at 16, 17. And number one, it shows God calls at any age, at any circumstance, but it's amazing to see. We don't really know what happened to Abraham before that, like why he was called. I think that's the point of Abraham's life. He's just a guy. And then Moses had to go through so much stuff before he was ready to deliver the people that he actually didn't deliver the people until he was 80 years old. But he had to spend 40 years in the court of Pharaoh to learn that. Then he had to go into the wilderness for another 40 years, learn that. And then God says, okay, now you're ready. David, he gets picked at 16, 17 years old, kills Goliath, and then has to basically go into Saul's court, go through all of the stuff that he went through. God had already anointed him king. He had already given him the anointing and mantle of that, but he didn't really place him in as king until around 30 years old. So I think a lot of these things that we say, man, I want God's plan for my life. Well, God's going to put you in the slow cooker for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the places I talked about stages of life, and I think that we miss that so often. Now, I 100% believe that God in our day calls people even at a young age to serve Him. Mm-hmm. I don't discredit. I mean, Paul tells Timothy, don't let anyone despise you for your youth. But I think often that we think about that calling, and we think that all of a sudden we have everything that we need.
Yeah.
And we don't. And like I can think back over my ministry, time in ministry, like where I am now, even 10 years ago, like I just, God continues to, like you said, it's really a slow cooker type situation. I mean, there's just things that marinate, and all of a sudden you get to another stage in life and in ministry, and you're like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
You know what we call slow cooking in today's ministry? The youth pastor.
I feel burnt already.
You've been living in the pot too long.
I've been in the slow cooker for a while now.
They had you on broil.
Turn the heat down a little bit.
But that is you can kind of speak to this, Jesse. It is a microcosm of the church.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is. Because you're kind of dealing with all the same things in well.
yeah, that's the beautiful thing about youth ministry is that, we want to be, of course, under the mission of Hope Church and the church, the Big C Church, all together. But within youth ministry, there's so many things going on that kind of just plays like a little mini church, from just our service and the way it flows. And it's been one of the beautiful things that we've had the opportunity to do is to just challenge students to be able to start using your gifts for God now, and I think, so many students think, well, God's not calling me to anything. I'm just a student, but really I think it's quite the opposite. I think the Lord's gifted so many of the next generation, especially in our church, and it's like, what are you doing to give back to the Lord, and how are you being obedient and what He's calling you to do?
And youth ministry and kids ministry. I mean, think about where our kids go on a daily basis if they're in public schools. They're in the greatest mission field and harvest field that they will ever have access to pretty much their entire life.
Yep.
For sure. They really have a lot of ability and capability, and I think it's our job as leaders and parents to train them up in the way they will go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where I want to, I just read this, and I think this is kind of interesting. It says this in verse 13 of Romans 4, for the promise to Abraham and his offspring, that he would be heir of the world. That's pretty crazy. That God basically said, you're not going to see the fulfillment of this when you're alive.
Yeah.
You're going to be long dead and gone, and yet through your lineage,
Through your offspring,
you're going to be the heir of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of those things where it's another reference in the New Testament of Israel's continued relationship with God.
Yeah.
That it hasn't stopped. It is one of those things. And it is amazing that even in Abraham's old life, after he had Isaac, how many more kids did he have?
I think it's 3, wasn't it?
3 or 4 more kids.
Yeah.
So whatever God did to fix that problem, he fixed it. Yeah.
But and I think that's just one of those situations that was, God always is going to, use and use his power
Yeah.
when he wants it.
Yeah.
And I think it
With who he wants it to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but I think so. All like even through Abraham and Sarah's life, like they're trying to fix it and try to make it happen on their own.
Yeah.
And God's like, it's not going to happen. It's not how I'm telling you. This is not. And all of a sudden, it's like, bam, it happens.
Yeah.
And he's like 100 years old. And I mean,
I think that's the thing that you both have done so beautiful throughout chapter 4 is that you've displayed the humanity of Abraham, you know, and truly allowed, you know, us who are sitting in the congregation and in the seats and stuff to see that it really is God's power working through Abraham in all of this, you know, and it goes right back to our salvation and you know, just so much that we've learned about that in the whole book of Romans that it's God's power working through us,
Yeah.
you know, and saving us. And
Yeah.
it's been a beautiful thing to see.
I don't know. It's funny to see seasoned men and women of God that have walked with the Lord for a very, very long time. And if they do it correctly and the Lord is working in their lives, and it's like they become more humble and they recognize more and more their fallibility and that it has nothing to do with them. One guy put it like this, you know, whenever God calls me into doing something, I feel like I'm a toddler. And I'm like, well, what am I even doing here? You know, he's like, I have to remind myself that this has nothing to do with me, my abilities. I mean, to be honest with you, are we not all just plagiarists?
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're not writing new content here.
Yeah.
I was well, and you and I had talked about this just prior, but I was telling my wife, I was telling Katie that I said I'm going to use a phrase at the end that's, I mean, I'm just straight taken from Joby Martin, but I feel, and I don't know this per se, but I feel like this is where he had to get this from.
Yeah.
Is that if the tomb is empty, anything is possible, and you know, it's one of those things where she goes to me, she said, well, aren't we all just doing that? Like,
Yeah.
we're just, we didn't write this.
No.
We're not even, like, we're just taking it and reworking it.
I tell my kids all the time, they're like, you know, what do you do all day? I said, I write a 15-page book report on a book that has no new material.
Yeah.
And then I have to present it at the end of the week. That's what I do, you know? And the funny thing about it is today, especially because I'm in Romans 5, you know, I'm excited to get to work. I'm excited to see where this thing is going to lead me and dig out the things that it wants to show me in order to present that. So it doesn't become stale. It actually becomes more living.
Yeah.
100%. Like,
Yeah.
I Romans has been one of my favorite books for
Yeah.
a long time. Studied it, like, just went through it. But I mean, even like this deep dive, when you're getting ready to preach, like, it is a different dive than when you're studying through
Yeah.
a chapter. There's just something different about it, and so you're trying to do everything that you can to pull as deeply as you can, and then to take that and to take what you've deeply dug in and through, and then articulate that back out in a 45 minute. Really, we could preach for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But like, it's so there's something there. But I mean, there was just so many things here in this second half of this chapter. That's just, man, it just, for me, after walking through this second half of chapter 4, like, it's up there with chapter 5. I mean,
Yeah.
chapter 8.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's something about the end of this chapter that just walking through the journey and the unbelief and the faith that Abraham walked through, and I assume, and we see Paul walk through in Acts. Like, I mean, there's not a whole lot talked about. Like, Paul seems very steady, but you know that he's a human, just like
Oh,
you
yeah.
and me,
Yeah.
and he had to be like, God, come on, like, what's going, like, why is this not, why haven't I got to Rome yet? All these things,
Yeah.
and yet, you know, when you just begin, it just becomes very real, as though these were people just like us. Yes, they are. We hold them with high regard, and we should hold them with high regard. But, like, it doesn't mean that they're on a different playing field than us. They're just lived in a different time, and now their stories
Yeah.
are in God's word.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when we get to Romans chapter 7, we're going to see the humanity and humility of Paul.
Yeah.
You know, things I want to do, I don't do.
Yeah.
And the things that I do, they're do. You know, I mean, like that, I don't want to do them, you know? And who's going to save this wretched soul, you know? And then we turn the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're the same way, Jesse. You come in on a weekly basis and are like, dude,
Yeah.
look what I found, you know?
Yeah, the hardest part for me is that the attention span of students. It's like I've got 25 minutes, if that. And we're going through First Peter right now, and it's just so rich, and walked through the first 12 verses last week, and literally I felt like I could have talked for an hour, just because I was in it all week long, just studying, pulling as much as I could. But I think the hard part for us as pastors is, okay, how do I take all this material and all this stuff that's in my heart and that God's been speaking to me, and how can I share it in a way where the gospel can just be heard and received, And it's that's the cry of our heart.
Well, and I don't think you ever do it as fully as you anticipate.
Yeah,
I mean, I think every Sunday I'll get done and I'll be like, man, I feel like I left something up there.
Well, and that's I just be honest. That's why I love what we're doing right now. I think that there's so much in, like you said, there's just so much stuff that I don't know that we do get to articulate. And doing, it's just different in a conversational form like this, to be able to interact. But there is a lot, and it's hard to get it all out. It really is.
Oh yeah,
it really is.
So one other main theme that he talks about here a lot, and we've gone through some of this, but I don't know that we've ever really discussed this, I don't know, as fully as we could. We probably won't today because there's a lot here, but the terms the law and faith. Because he keeps saying this didn't happen to Abraham after the law. It happened before.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen through the law. It happened by faith.
Yeah.
It is a reoccurring theme that, number one, Paul's trying to hammer home to Jewish readers and even Gentile believers, is to say, look, the law was merely there as a mirror to show you what you were doing wrong. It could not save you. It could not save you. And it wasn't these set of standards that Abraham abided by. He did it by faith. And even what you just said about Paul. Paul, you're going to Rome. Well, how do I get there? Not going to tell you. You're going to go through shipwreck. You're going to go through hardship. Every time you feel like you're going to take a step there, I'm going to put you in jail for 2 years. I mean, the frustration of hearing directly from God. I mean, you're going to Rome. Okay, I believe it. Well, now how am I going to get there, Yeah. And he ends up having to get to Rome under a Roman guard, I mean, he's basically got a military service that brings him to Rome. And once again, it kind of shows that our ways are not God's ways. God's going to do it. But I don't know if you got any thoughts on the law versus faith.
Yeah, well, so in verse 14, because he opens that up like that, but in verse 14 he says, "For if it is the adherents of the law who are to be the heirs." So, in other words, that those adherents would have come after the law. If they were to be the adherents of the faith, faith is null and the promise is void. So what God promised and the faith that Abraham showed is null and void. And so Paul's like, that's not the case, for the law brings forth wrath. But where there is no law, there is no transgression. So I think there's just this balance. I think far too often that, in the day in which we live, in this post-Christ, post-resurrection church day, we so often look at the law as useless and not important, and so much of grace, and it doesn't diminish grace, but there has to be the law. The law had to be there. Verse 15 says it. For the law brings forth wrath. It shows the wrath. But where there is no law, there is no transgression. And then he says, that's why it depends on faith. That in order that the promise may rest on grace and be guaranteed to the offspring, not only to the adherents of the law, but also to the one who shares the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. So faith and the law have to coincide. Like they're not. It's not that, hey, you just follow the law to a T and you get a pass.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this last week about Jewish people. I think this was in this podcast, maybe not. But Jews who just believe Abraham's sitting at the door at the door of hell and waiting. And if you're Jewish, you
got a free pass.
You got a free pass. But that's not. He's not saying it. Also depends on faith. We have to have faith and trust in Jesus. And we have to have faith and trust. Abraham had faith in God. He didn't understand the things that Jesus was going to come. He didn't understand all of that, but he trusted that God had a plan and a way. And that faith produced his righteousness.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he worked those things. It wasn't because, and that's what I think we have. That's why I think we have to show that Abraham was just like one of us. Because if not, then we show, if we look at Abraham and say, well, his faith saved him. Like, no, he had, like, Paul tells us this. There are moments where no unbelief made him waver. So there were some moments of unbelief in his life where he's like, Lord, I'm laughing at you. And that's why I went back to Genesis so much, because I just thought, like, we got to look at this and show, like, what's actually going on and what Paul's actually pointing to as this unbelief here.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out in the text yesterday, that, man, unbelief is okay to have. Because, I mean, again, we're human. And I just think that's something that some people just immediately disqualify themselves right away. Like, oh, I have unbelief. I guess maybe he's really not calling me to this, or I don't know how it's going to work out, or I need 10 steps to see how it's going to work out before I put my faith in this. And I just thought that was really important to point out that unbelief is going to happen sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in Romans 8, it's right around 23. But what he's talking about really is he's sort of using an illustration of pregnancy. And what he says this in verse 24, he says this, "For in this hope we are saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." And this is, we're kind of equating the same thing. But the illustration that I see is like all of creation is groaning and waiting for this restoration.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like a woman that's pregnant. She knows she has a baby.
Yeah.
She hopes this pregnancy will come to term. The baby's going to be good. Now, with modern technology, we can see the baby. We see the gender. We see all of these things. But the baby is not here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the amazing thing about this is that's kind of hope, faith, those interchangeable terms, because we put our faith in that hope that one day Christ will return, or we will be reunited through death by faith. We're going to be home again. And so that, because again, in Romans chapter 4, I think
You know what verse 22 says, right?
Yes, that's where I was getting to.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well, you said that, and I thought that's right there.
Right.
It says in verse 22 of Romans chapter 8, "For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now." And not only that, not only creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit grown inwardly as we eagerly await the adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies.
Right. And so going back to chapter 4, let me read the last couple verses, because this is kind of the key verse that you had. "That is why faith was counted to him as righteousness. But the words it was counted to him were not written for his sake alone, but for ours also." Why? Because of Jesus. "It was counted to us who believe in him who was raised from the dead, Jesus our Lord, who was delivered up for our trespasses and raised for our justification." Yeah. That is our hope.
Yeah.
That's our hope. And so we've not seen Jesus. We didn't get to experience the nail holes in his hands and the wounds in his side, yet we believe.
Yeah.
And we put our faith in the fact that 2,000 years ago, a real Jesus died a real death, and that death had unbelievable cosmic, universal consequences that reconciled us to God.
Yeah.
And that is the most amazing thing about the gospel, is that, he did it while we were sinners.
Yeah.
I'm getting into my message next week. I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
yeah,
I can't
you
keep doing
slow
this.
down.
But that's where I just think that there's so. This is why this is so powerful, because if the tomb is empty, it changes everything. Mm-hmm. Like it drastically shifts everything. We're not like, and I think that we diminish that even in our day-to-day walk. That's like, I know we know that, like we believe that the tomb is empty, but I think even in our day-to-day walk, we forget that if the tomb is empty, and like everything's been taken care of. And if God was able to do that, if he was able to raise Jesus from the dead, then that, like Warren Wiersbe said, that shows the satisfactory atonement.
Yes.
And it's just so powerful that if that appeased God's wrath, so now because of that, now we're justified. Now when we stand before God, we understand that, man, he was able, and that was satisfactory to God, and that's just.
So the amazing
So
thing
good.
about this thought, because I love that Paul keeps building. He keeps building and building and building, and he takes the term justification, and then he adds one more phrase in chapter 5. Again, I don't want to go too much into this, but the term is reconciliation. So justification is free for every person on the planet. Like Jesus did this to justify humanity. And if they would put their faith and trust in that justification, they would be saved, and they would move into reconciliation. And reconciliation, when I looked it up, it's actually an accounting term. The books have been balanced. What did we give God? Our sin. What did he give us? His righteousness. That's a balancing of the book, but you have to step into faith through justification.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And he just keeps building and building and building all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
How are we going to top Romans?
I mean, I don't. And somebody told me that one time. You know, they said, "Man, Sunday that was phenomenal. How are you going to top that?" I said, "I'm not. It's just going to be different." And that's the beautiful thing about the whole counsel of God's Word, is that we have amassed such amount of knowledge now in doing this over the past 7-8 years that we're not laying foundations anymore. We're building upon doctrinal foundations.
Yeah.
We're starting to grow, and we're seeing this in our congregation.
Absolutely.
We really, really are.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible place to be right now.
It is.
Yeah. But I have no idea.
No. Well, I said that. I mean, it's just.
I mean,
Romans is just so powerful, though. I mean, it just really.
We
is.
still have 12 chapters to go, so.
Oh, we got a long way to go. But I mean, it's just been like just the like I don't know. Over the last couple of weeks, I guess I've just sat there and thought, man, I've always wanted to walk through Romans. Knew it would be powerful. But it's always so challenging, and I've heard just so many people just shy away from it over the years, and I'm like, we're doing it, and this is fun, and this is really good, and so anyways.
Yeah. I'm really happy about doing first part of 5. I'm really, yeah.
Good.
You got anything else, Jessica?
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm excited for 5. Honestly, like 5 better than 4, personally.
Me
It's
too.
just
It's
personal preference. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
so-
big therefore right at the beginning.
Yep.
And it basically takes all of chapter 4 and it condenses it into that one word. And it's like, after all I've told you,
Yeah.
after all you've learned, now let me show you how this all works together. There's 7 things in the first 11 chapters that our justification did for us, which is pretty exciting. So
So how far are you going Sunday?
11, verse 11.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. All right.
Well, we thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. Hope that we'll see you either this Wednesday or this coming Sunday. Hope you all have a good week.